We took a look at some of the running backs in the last round. George has this all color coordinated for us, so it's looking nice and pretty and easy to take a look at. You see, I was actually a wide receiver run there. The picks, of course, the number on the left. But Jaxon Smith-Njigba, followed by Quentin Johnston, followed by Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. The run that we had, luckily, I think we had to sweat it out as a group, the over 3.5 wide receivers in the first round, but we did get there. And then we saw 4 wide receivers in the second round, and then several here in the third round. What stands out to you on a lot of names, a lot to unpack here, of course, Kevin, but 1 or 2 names that really jump off the page to you?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to look at the first round guys, I think Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the fact that he was not maybe as separated from the pack as some would have thought. If I had some mock draft based expected draft positions, he was more around 11 or 12, and the rest of the guys were in the 20s. So the fact that they were all packed in together and then he caused a little mini run is interesting there. And I do think also for pretty much all the guys here in this list, other than maybe Jordan Addison, who's going to step in immediately and be able to win the wide receiver 2 role, the rest of them are either going to be dealing with some offensive issues. When it comes to Flowers, we'll see if Baltimore really turns the corner as having an effective passing and high volume, I guess, passing game there. And then for the first 2 receivers taken, JSN and then also Quentin Johnston, they come in as basically wide receiver 3s, and without injury, I'm not sure if they can get up to wide receiver 2 within this first season. So I think some patience is going to be necessary if you have either one of those guys, again, barring an injury to the top receivers.
I thought one of the big takeaways for me is usually you see teams at the back part of the draft. Well, teams at the back part of the draft are usually pretty good teams, right? And sometimes we see wide receiver runs early on. We have in years past. This class was a little bit different, not as strong clearly, but those players went to good teams, good offenses with good quarterbacks. But as you alluded to, at best for JSN, I mean, you still got Lockett and DK there. Quentin Johnston, say what you want about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams staying on the field, but when those guys are on the field, the number 3 there, but linked to a good quarterback and a good offense in Justin Herbert. A lot going on all of a sudden in Baltimore, with Odell Beckham Jr. signing, and, you got Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. And I think, as the team last year played 12%, 11 personnel, which was a legal low. New offensive coordinator. I think we're going to see some changes in Baltimore. But you mentioned Addison as a guy that's probably going to fight for number 2 targets behind Justin Jefferson with TJ Hawkinson. Is there a wide receiver in the second or the third round that you feel like could have some fantasy relevance? Because Carolina did a lot in the offseason, of course, rookie quarterback, but they brought in Adam Thielen. Also brought in DJ Chark. I feel for my guy, Terrace Marshall. We were just starting to see Terrace Marshall and what he could do, but you're always going to get an uptick, of course, when anytime Kansas City drafts a wide receiver, people like to freak out about that. Sky Moore did not return to value last year. We saw him kind of show up in the Super Bowl and Kadarius Toney there, but they lost Juju. They lost Mecole Hardman and also Tyreek Hill, of course, a couple years ago. I think maybe the Marvin Mims Jr. could be bad news for Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton in the future. Also, Tim Patrick coming off an injury, a new offense there with Sean Payton. What do you make of some of these other names that could potentially, like Jalen Reed's a guy that maybe could be number 2 for Jordan Love this year?
Yeah. There is a lot of interesting potential scenarios here. Maybe I'll start with some of the head scratching picks. I'm going to say Marvin Mims, not because I dislike Mims at all. He was someone who was projected to go more like in the third round, and I thought that he was just as good as receivers who were projected to go into the second round. But if you look at Denver, you have Cortland Sutton on a contract that you probably can't get out or won't get out of for at least the next 2 seasons. They picked up Jerry Jeudy's 5th-year option. So Jeudy is going to be there. It's a fully guaranteed option. So he's going to be there next season, and he's going to be playing. And then if you look beyond that, maybe they'll release someone like Tim Patrick. They also had KJ Hamler, who they had drafted. They didn't have a lot of picks just in total because of the Russell Wilson trade. So I don't know. It's a weird one here. Maybe it's Sean Payton coming in and saying, I want to rebuild this offense the way that I want it to look, and I want to get a deep threat for Russell Wilson. But at least, this is one when you're even looking into 2024 without injury, maybe wide receiver 3 is in a very limited role for Mims is the best option there. I think Mingo, you have to be interested. I didn't necessarily love him as a prospect, but he went a lot earlier than some people thought. And in Carolina, just not a lot there. No, you admit they have these short-term rental type of guys in DJ Chark and then older Adam Thielen. So he's a size speed guy. He's a guy who ran in the 4.4s despite being 220 pounds. Wasn't necessarily the most productive wide receiver, but he's got that sort of upside. And I guess the other guy who I was pretty high on going into the process, and maybe I'm a little bit less high now that he slipped in the draft, was Jalen Hyatt, who I thought could be at least adjacent to the top 4 receivers. He doesn't go all the way until the 3rd round, but when we're talking about the New York Giants, not a single receiver on that team had even 725 yards last season. You have Sterling Shepard coming back from an ACL tear. He's been the most productive receiver in his career, but he's signed to a 1-year deal. Who knows if he'll stick around? You have a bunch of other guys like Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins and others who have been okay, but really that's pretty wide open there as far as that receiver room. So Hyatt may step into a situation where he actually has the least amount of competition. And Daniel Jones needs an explosive wide receiver. He's a guy who had right near the bottom of starting quarterbacks and big time throws the last 2 seasons after being very, very high in 2020. Yeah. So they've been missing that element in their offense. So I feel like he should be a player who should be able to get on the field and be a focal point of the offense, maybe very early in the season.
I like that call a lot. And I remember you jumped on the show. We were talking about that. I think when you jumped on, we were wondering where he would go, Jalen Hyatt. And there's just still not a lot going on there in New York. I know they brought in Waller, who's over 30 now, but they have some wide receivers on that team who haven't shown us a whole lot on the field and just really staying on the field. I like the outlook from a dynasty standpoint of like Michael Wilson, maybe linked to Kyler, if Hopkins is gone here in the next couple of years. Josh Downs, I liked the pick there, and Cedric Tillman in Cleveland. I think it was bad news potentially for Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I think the answer is just to stay away from everybody in Kansas City not named Mahomes or Travis Kelce. And, Mahomes is going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, the story is that Mahomes was working in the offseason with him. And because I don't think Rice was seen as someone who was going to go that early and may have prompted that pick. I mean, we don't have a large sample, but the last time we heard Patrick Mahomes wants this guy, it was the CEH pick. So, but I was saying, if you have Patrick Mahomes on your team, maybe it's worth letting him completely light on fire a draft pick every couple of drafts, and it's still worth it to have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always fun to stack Mahomes, and you're going to be able to do that. I mean, you could, on Underdog Best Ball, you can have a start with Mahomes and Kelce and then easily be able to pick out a Kadarius Toney, a Sky Moore, or one of his new fancy toys there. I did not know that he was working out and that's what he wanted. So listen,
that was the story from Veach. I think Veach leaked that to somebody after that pick. So that's the rationale there. But again, we're talking about mid, second round pick. It's not the most that's being invested in him, but he certainly went earlier than a lot of guys. And the biggest fallers being Hyatt and Downs, who were the guys who were seen as going, Tillman, I guess, to a degree also, who were seen as being more second round picks.